am so excited to talk to you today because you are not only a CFP, which is already such an amazing thing for my audience to really know more CFPs, right? But then also you're a business manager for a lot of artists. And
Right.
so that's the first thing I want to ask you, like, what is a business manager?
So different than the wealth manager, right? Because I started off in wealth management and then I got involved in business management because I actually did a commercial for Hyundai years ago. And the actress was married to a gentleman that worked for Sony. Eventually, he became like the president of Sony Music Latin. And that's how I kind of got into the business management side. So what we do different. So on the business management side, we actually become like the personal CFO, the business CFO of that client, of that artist. We pay their bills, we do the bookkeeping, we take care of their credit, we buy their homes, cars, yachts, planes. We oversee the hiring of their staff. We invest their money. We oversee all their insurance. I mean, I got to the point where I become so cynical that even though we use great, great people, I still have to oversee that they have the proper, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, everything. So, I mean, we literally do everything. We having conversations with the clients right before they get married, especially in the entertainment industry. We're helping them do the prenups. We're in the meetings with the estate plans because remember, I've had a couple clients who passed away, very famous people, and their estates technically sometimes are worth more because they have movie rights coming after them. They're selling more records after they pass away. So the estate plans, get a little bit more, not complicated, but you really got to focus on that. And not a lot of estate planning attorneys are used to that. So it's basically we do everything for that person.
So is it ever a reciprocal relationship where you ask them to do some things, or is it all on you to do everything?
No, well, obviously we have to ask them, but I always say that when you're working with artists, it's always like herding cats, right? Because they're so ripe and they're so creative. And my job actually, even though I'm a little bit ripe brain because I've written 5 books, right? But my job is to allow them to be in that space, to be creative. Because once you get them doing all the finances, that's the left brain, that's the logical brain, and you take away their earning power. So, they need to be involved. What we do though is for every single client, I love transparency because in the world of business management, there's not the same level of compliance that there is in wealth management. So my goal is to try to be very transparent with the clients, and that way they see everything. So we CC our clients on every single email that when we reach out to the insurance agents or to their estate planning attorney. So they're in the loop, but 90% of the time, they probably don't even read their emails. I'll have to WhatsApp them, right? Because they travel, I WhatsApp them, hey, just sent you an email, you better read it. And, okay. And so we try to keep them involved as much as possible because to me, it's really important that they understand at least what's going on.
Yeah, and that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you too, is like, how do you create that transparency? Because you always hear about some business managers who are like, for some reason, like they've taken their clients' money and, used it all. And all of a sudden the client doesn't even realize it until years and years later, like they're broke, they don't have any money. Yeah. How do you create that transparency?
Yeah, so what we do is, so for example, on the accounting side, we use software. Sometimes, like for example, they use QuickBooks, right? We use QuickBooks for them. We buy the QuickBooks under their name and not under the firm's name. And so they're paying the online account. They have access. Like if tomorrow they wanted to leave us, they can shut us down, but they have all their information. Because one of the first things is that when the accountant doesn't give, or the business manager doesn't give access to the client, and then somehow there's a breakup in the relationship, that the business manager has a hard time giving the information to to the next business manager if they've been stealing from them, right? So we give them access. We also use a financial portal called eMoney, which the clients on eMoney, it's an aggregator. We have all their financial documents under their vault. We aggregate everything. They have it on their phone. They can log on and take a look at what their bank accounts are doing. So for us, it's important that they have access to all of that and that, they own that information. And so for us, that was really important.
Is that the difference between like you as a business manager and also being a wealth manager, CFP, versus somebody else who just comes in and says, yes, I'm a business manager, I'm going to manage your money for you?
Well, so business managers really don't manage money, right? Business managers don't manage money. They're doing all that other stuff. The problem is that normally most investment managers, all they do is manage money. The thing is that there's nobody giving context to what's going on. So for example, right now, I have a client that has a lot of money, it's being invested. So me as the wealth manager, I'm thinking, hold on a second. Because their assets are over 11.5 million, it's this young artist who got a huge advance and he's over 11.5 million. So if he dies, the estate's going to be paid a lot in taxes. So who's getting that information to the accountant, the estate planning attorney, and the insurance agent? So in this case, I, as a business manager, saw all of that and said, listen, I need to contact your estate planning attorney because we need to create an irrevocable life insurance trust to put assets in an insurance policy that will pay the estate taxes and not accumulate if we don't put it in there. So then we have to hire an insurance agency to do a life insurance plan, whether it's a permanent policy. So who's calling that person? And then who's calling that person connected to the estate planning attorney? Then I got to call the tax accountant to basically take a look at that. So as a business manager, they normally will work with different people. So it's kind of in-house. We have that, but sometimes they have their own CPA. So as a business manager, I'm the glue that's making sure. Now, I have a little bit extra because as a prior, technically wealth manager, I have all that experience and I bring it in. But if you weren't, we see business managers are really kind of accountants, CPAs, mostly doing the bookkeeping, doing the accounting, and they trust that the insurance agent knows what they're doing. They trust that the estate planning attorney, and they're all talking to each other, but they never do. So my job is a business manager really should be the glue, right? So that's kind of an example of how a business manager should really put everything together. Because otherwise, guess what? The client would have to be that point person, and they don't have a clue. I mean, it's really sophisticated stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would be the benefit of like having a business manager like you?
Well, again, business managers tend to be a little bit more expensive because you're doing the day-to-day stuff. But I always tell people a business manager, if you find somebody, it doesn't matter whether it's a financial planner, business manager, wealth manager, financial coach, that really truly has your best interest. And obviously you're supposed to keep an eye on your money, but the problem is there isn't enough hours in the day, as you and I know, probably under the COVID conditions, we're all working harder and longer than ever before, right?
Yes.
So my job is to keep my client worry-free and create a hassle-free experience so they can focus on their unique abilities to be able to make more money. And also to protect them against, sometimes not the financial planning industry, but to protect them against themselves. Because the problem with people in the entertainment industry is that they have a roller coaster type of income. They'll work 6 weeks, 6 months on a project and have nothing. And so we really have to be more efficient at putting money away for their tax return, putting more money away for savings for other months that they won't have available. Because what happens when you know that you're not, well, at the beginning, if I tell a client, hey, we're going to put 30% away or 25% away for the taxes, guess what? They're fine with it until the job stops and they say, hey, I need to live on that tax money. But here comes tax season, and all of a sudden they're going to owe, let's say they made 100,000, they're going to owe 25,000. They don't have the money. And that's a very, similar situation that happens with entertainers. So my job is to work with them and get them to understand and put money away and avoid them from shooting themselves in the foot, I guess, as they say.
Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed that a lot of financial advisors who don't have the knowledge of like the entertainment industry, they don't actually understand why you would even need to have an emergency savings account with a year's worth of expenses or anything like that. They're like, you're putting way too much money into that account,
Right.
And when I was a TV producer, I would always say, well, no, I just want to have that security. I want to know that I have enough money to get through, even if I'm not working.
Yep.
Right.
No, well, and so I deal with, besides like television and film, I also deal mostly, I would say like 60-70% of what I do is also the music industry. Very nuanced, because they can get, for example, when they're running out of money, advances. If they're a songwriter, they could get advances from their record label, and they're going to get a big tax hit. Also, one of the things that most people don't really realize that I got to get an estate plan. I have an estate plan completed for every single artist I ever worked with. And I've worked with some iconic artists who've been around for 50, 20 years and have still yet to do an estate plan. So those are the things I focus on, building the foundation really strong. And a lot of it is they don't have the proper insurance, they have the wrong type, or they don't have the right estate plan, they don't have enough emergency reserves, the things that aren't urgent, but very important, right? And most of the time, creatives love that urgency. They love, that's what makes them creative.
Yes,
so,
that feeling of always being on the edge.
And the other thing is that I'm also, I'm really straightforward. I'm very blunt, so I don't have a lot of time. And so when I call them, it's like, I go, dude, what are you doing? You can't do that. Or you're killing me. So it's like, we're gonna do this. And then finally, you go, don't get mad at me. They'll say, hey, I'm never mad at anybody. I just want to make sure that I'm protecting you. And like I said, I never tell them I'm protecting you against yourself. But most of the time I'm thinking that.
What have you seen that you can share with us that, you saw, like, in terms of something that an artist or an entertainer was going through, and then that you helped didn't go down that wrong path? And then
I mean, it happens all the time. One of the things that I've done is, again, I have a lot of these young musicians, a lot of good-looking young musician men, and obviously there's a lot of women that are attracted to them. And the hardest thing is that when they finally fall in love at the age of 25 or 27, and these guys are just getting bigger and bigger, making more money, where they fall in love and they're calling me, hey, I'm going to get married next month, but we can't tell the press. And I said, you can't. I go, we got to get the prenuptial agreement done. Oh, no, we love each other. And I go, you can't. We have to get the prenuptial agreement. But what's she going to think? And, I have to fight with him. And I will share with you that I've already done it 3 times with 3 different major artists who we've made them do the prenup. And I will tell you, it has saved their butts, because they've all went through divorce. I mean, obviously, divorce in the United States is around 51% for all Americans, right? Mm-hmm. If you're Christian or Catholic, I think that it's 52%. If you're an artist, it's up in the 80s. And so my job is to protect everything they've worked hard for in their wealth. We've had that. Let me just share with you. I had a very famous Mexican singer who died in a plane crash in 2012 at the end of December. And we made sure that she got her estate plan done. Previous to that, she'd already been very famous for a few years, had not done the estate plan. I fought with her to get that estate plan done, and we got it done, and it's taking care of her family. We still administer the estate for the children. So, those are some real crucial big things that you don't think about, but it's as much as we've had clients where we tell them we're going to create a separate checking account or savings account for your taxes. When the money comes in, we automatically just save it. And they're unaware of it. And we've had, they've gotten their tax bill when the CPAs do the return. And I say, hey, we owe $150,000 in taxes. Like, oh my God, where am I going to get the money? And they said, remember I told you that we were going to take a portion of everything, you got to put it away? Well, we have about $160,000 in there. And he goes, oh my God. So they thought that they had spent all the money, right? If we wouldn't have put some money away. And most likely, if they would have gotten their hands, they would have spent it.
Right. Very true. Yeah. What is your philosophy on prenups in general? Like, just even if you're not somebody who's, really famous.
Look, I'm a romantic. I will share with you. I'll tell the whole world that I love my wife like to pieces and to death, right? But I went through a divorce at one point. She went through a divorce at one point. This is our second marriage. And I have been through my lifetime, because I handle so many clients that are in the entertainment industry. I've been through so many divorces. And at the end of the day, divorce in America, in the court system, it's just business. And it's not about love, and it's not about romance. It's just business. And so what happens is that I have seen a lot of people lose tremendous amounts of wealth, and they were only married, a year, because of the community property states, for example, if you live in Southern California. So it's really important that they look at it. My feeling is this, is that I've always been told, doesn't matter what's a woman or a man who's getting married, my clients say, the person says they don't mind signing the prenup because they're not marrying me for my fame or for my wealth. And, they say that, and then the soon-to-be, the fiance, will tell me that until we get the papers to them, and they have to take it to their own attorney, and then all the love and romance goes thrown out the window, and there's no more, well, hold on a second, I said you would sign. And they said, well, no, my attorney's telling me not to sign anymore. So then it gets a little bit, So now you wonder, okay, were they really getting married for love, or were they getting married for the celebrity fame of their of that other individual they're getting married to? I strongly believe in it. A lot of people have told me, you know what, it's not enough time. I'll do a post-up afterwards, and I can tell you, I almost never can get a post-up done because there's no reason why the new spouse has to sign a post-up. So to me, prenups are really, really super important, and it's unfortunately that Louis Barajas, have to be the person that I'm the messenger that has to bring that to the other spouse. And sometimes it's been where I make the spouse, they think I'm the enemy, right? And so, yeah, then all of a sudden I lose the love of the other spouse. I have to win them back after a while.
Right, because it's so easy to blame their business manager, right? You.
Well, let me just share with you, and here's actually, this is a good point. So business managers are really the bad person, because I've had clients who say, hey, I got to get that prenup signed, but you tell them that you're telling me to get it done. So I'll tell the spouse, hey, I'm so sorry, but I'm the business manager. I can't let my client get married without the prenup, even though it's a client telling me they want the prenup, right? So that's why I'm the bad guy. But it's the same thing actually when we have relatives who are borrowing money from our clients, right? Because they're famous, and sometimes famous people don't make a lot of money, as you probably know that you work with celebrities as well. And so they'll say, hey, my cousin's asking me for a $15,000 loan. I told him that it's up to you as business manager, but don't lend it to them. So, oh, I'm so sorry. We've got other projects going on. They can't lend me the money. So we still are I have to give all the bad news. So I'm the bad person, but that's okay. I protect my clients.
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting point, because yes, I have a lot of clients who, once they get a little bit of fame, there, a lot of relatives come out of the woodwork and are like, oh, can I borrow $20, $100, $1,000, right? And so what is your take on it? How would you explain this to your clients, like when that stuff happens?
Well, believe it or not, that happens to a lot of athletes that we have. So with athletes, it's a little different. So what happens with a lot of, like, to say, if you're a performing artist, most performing artists have been on the road, living in their cars. They've suffered, right? A lot of young athletes, technically from an early age, have known or have had the capacity where everybody kind of knew they're going to be professionals at one point, get a big contract. So normally they come with an entourage of their friends from high school or college or whatever, who actually get used to getting everything paid when they all go out to dinner, or when my client, the athlete, has money and they buy stuff, and then they're buying stuff for their friends, right, to keep their friends close.
Yep.
So it's we have to have that conversation. I will share with you that we have lost clients, but only athlete clients, because their entourage has put in their ear, hey, Louis is not really helping you out. And the reason for that is because I'm having conversations with clients saying, listen, we got to put the oxygen mask on first. You have to take care of yourself. You have to save money, whatever. If you want to help out your friends, make them work for it. Or if you're going to help them pay for a college education or for something for them, so that way they can go out and be independent and not depend on you your whole lifetime. And, the entourage doesn't like that. And if they don't like that, they're putting, hey, Louis is not such a nice guy after all. You should really think about getting rid of him, because what happens is that all of a sudden I call it their social welfare is pretty much over, right? And so, but most athletes now are starting to really understand more money as more financial information is out there. So yeah.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your background. Like, why did you even get into this whole field in this industry?
Well, I'm, the son of two Mexican immigrant parents from Mexico, born in Boyle Heights in East Los Angeles. And so when I was 11, my dad lost two jobs back in like 1971, 72. I was 11 years old. And I don't know if you've ever been, the eldest child of immigrant parents, but you're the only one that really speaks English.
Yes, that's me.
I love books, right? And so my dad lost two jobs, and we were on the brink of maybe, living in the car. And my dad said, he was a welder, and he bought a welding machine and started his own company doing wrought iron. Wrought iron gates and fences and window treatments. And so I helped him fill that out. And then a couple of years later, he got audited by the IRS because he hadn't filed his business tax returns. But actually, at that point, they came to my dad's shop, and he looked at me to translate, and he said, you know what taxes are? And I looked at him and I said, no. And so I said, but if there's a book, I'll find out. And so my dad drove me as of last night in Boyle Heights, there's never been a bookstore. And so my dad drove me like 15 miles to go buy a book. And then I got audited on that, tax return 2 years later. And so what happened was I realized that there was no one in our community that could offer my dad guidance and assistance at that time, because most Latinos were unbanked and there wasn't any financial literacy. And most financial planners in poor areas tend to be real estate agents, right? They tend to be real estate agents or maybe an insurance agent. And I made a commitment to my father. I was going to learn everything about money. And so, I ended up working with really high profile, really wealthy people at a firm called Kenneth Leventhal in Newport Beach, California. And then back in 1990, several things happened to me, and I made a commitment to go back into the community and help the poor, the underserved. And so that's kind of a little bit of my story, right? And it's a long story, but for me, it's always been that even though my clients now tend to be regular people and super wealthy people or very famous people, they all come from nothing. They all come from parents who didn't have anything, so they're not used to having that wealth around them. And so my job is to protect them. And so I treat everyone like if it were my father. And I don't want somebody to go have their 11-year-old child be their translator when it comes to finances when they don't have the experience. So that's what we do. To me, I've built a practice around my purpose of helping people who've never had the access. Now, here's the interesting part, Katie, is that a lot of people who are very famous making a lot of money will make you believe that they're really smart about money. That's the reason why they made it. And so I know better than that. I've got clients who make $60,000 a year, but I've also got clients who make $6 million a year. And the $6 million a year clients will not ask you questions, but I know that they don't know what I'm talking about, because the problem is they don't have that experience with finances, insurance, investments, estate planning, and all that. So I said, hey, listen, let's cut the BS. I know you don't have the experience. It's okay to tell me, shit, I don't know. I don't know. Tell me, and I will bring it down, and I will bring it down where I'm explaining everything like I was explaining everything with respect and dignity, like if I was talking to my dad. And say, Dad, it's let me just. And so I'm a teacher at heart. I've written 5 books, and I love to teach, and I've taught at a couple of universities. And so the way I approach financial planning with clients is that I teach them. I want them to know enough that so they understand what's going on, and they don't feel like everything's above their head and they're not understanding anything, but they just trust me blindly. I don't want anybody to trust us blindly. I want them to ask questions and not feel intimidated. To be quite honest with you.
Yeah, because most of the time finances can get to the point where people have like some shame around it too, right? If they don't really understand.
Well, that's the behavioral side, right? That's you're like the expert in coaching, right? And so that's you're the one. You're like the ideal person that prepares those clients for me. Yes. But you work with what I call the most difficult thing. So let me just share with you, when I originally went back to East LA after working with billionaires and multimillionaires, remember, I came from an area of poverty, and I realized that there was a lack of financial literacy. But guess what? It never was that. It was the mindset. To be quite honest with you, my very first book was called The Latino Journey to Financial Greatness, which was a book on overcoming cultural limiting beliefs about money. And that's about the mindset. That's the coaching part. In fact, to me, the coaching part is the foundation. It's the critical part to get them to become aware of what's holding them back and what stops them from achieving wealth. Because no amount of financial execution or financial knowledge will work unless you have the proper mindset. And sometimes it's up to you to make them discover what their financial story is, right? What their stories are about money. Yes. And once they get that, they have these epiphanies, and they realize, now I know why I'm not wealthy. I'm thinking I have a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset. And so it's all these things that really, if I can work with people that already kind of gone through that type of coaching, it makes their success and my success a lot more important.
As a business manager, it seems like you have to kind of put your foot down and say, no, this needs to happen. That can't happen.
Well, here's the thing. So the problem is that most of the financial planning industry, I will share with you, is a facade to sell a product, okay? And the problem is that sometimes my clients, through this mass communication on television that financial planning is about insurance or a mutual fund or an ETF or whatever, I have to remove that level of mindset that they have. For example, I will just share with you. And this has nothing to do with an artist. It could be with somebody who's never been to college, but they have two kids and they want to send their kid to college. When they come to me, I ask them, I said, how important is your kid? You know, they want to say, Louis, I have money to put for their college education. Which account should I use? I've heard that in California, they have the scholarship 529 plan. And I take a step back and I ask them, well, hold on a second. What are your kids' grades? What's their GPA? And he goes, well, nobody's ever asked me that. I said, well, do you know it? And I go, well, to be quite honest with you, I don't. And I said, okay, so how are they doing in math? How are they doing in English? Are you engaged? Do you go to parent-teacher night? You have to understand, you have to treat everybody differently. Now, if I'm dealing with two PhDs, I can kind of skip that step. But if I've got a lot of clients that have never been to college, don't have that background, don't have experience, their goal is not for them to have enough money to send their kids to college. Really, if you really talk them through it, their goal is for their kid to graduate from college. Okay, that's a very different experience. And so sometimes we use the money for the kid to get tutoring, to get better grades, to be better in math, to be better in English, to elevate their level of self-esteem. We send them to self-esteem workshops before we even open a scholarship. So it's really important where I don't put my foot down, but I have a conversation to say, what's the highest and best use of money, right? If you get, I was an MBA student at Claremont Graduate School, you take a finance course, and basically finance is what's the highest and best use of money? If you have $100, where do you invest it? And in my situation is sometimes I will share with you where I put my foot down instead of putting money and opening up a 401k for that owner, business owner, I will say, maybe we need to get some marriage counseling. Because the couple, I can tell, are having marital difficulties, and sometimes we end up saving money for the divorce attorneys instead of the couple. So you have to take a step back and not get so caught up on what we've been taught in the world of financial planning, because real life happens with real people. And you got to get to know them. That's why when people come to you, they tell me, well, if I get somebody like a man that comes to me and wants to do something for his wife, I go, I need your wife to be here, and I want to have a conversation, and I want to get to know what makes you think, and I want to know what sabotages you, right? And let me just share with you, I have artists who are making a lot of money, and I cannot get them to spend. So now I know I can send them to Katie. So what's going to happen? They're buying $200,000 watches. I know that's crazy, right? But they're buying 200,000. They're buying 3 or 4 a year. So you're talking about they're spending 800,000 on watches, where they really have to be making about 1.2 million to have the money to spend on that. And and having that conversation, it's deeper than buying the watches or me talking to them about finances. Something is making them buy that really they don't need it, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of conversation, and somebody who's great at coaching that, I do some of that because I've written about it. I wrote a book called Overworked, Overwhelmed, and Underpaid, which is really a coaching book, but that requires a different level of time that the client also has to put into to figure out what is sabotaging from them having wealth. They're not going to have wealth buying watches, obviously.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and then this is what sets you apart. When I first heard you speak, what I really was so inspired by was this true caring of like somebody as a human being first, and then what they're going through, rather than just looking at their financial picture.
Yeah. Well, I will share with you that I actually lost a couple of clients because I've told them, I said, I can't continue with you because you put your confidence in me to help you get to where you told me where you want to be, but you're sabotaging yourself. And the problem is more deep rooted. And, I don't want to just put a Band-Aid on your finances. I really want to cure you. And it requires, and there's this whole concept of financial therapy, right? There's even a financial therapy association. And I tell them, I really believe we need some therapy here, and I'm not the person qualified to do that. And so, and they don't like that. There's some people that just think, that, well, I'll go to someone. Well, the problem is certain people will go to people where they will tell them what they want to hear versus what they need to hear, right? Yes. And so then I become the villain, and but those are few and far between. Other people really do appreciate. They hate you at the beginning because it's like children, And I always tell them, look, I'm not saying you can't afford that. I'm saying you can't afford that right now. And they're buying these Bentleys. They're buying those that want to buy a Bentley. Can I buy a Bentley? And I go, I said, I'm not saying you can't buy a Bentley. I'm just telling you that you can't buy a Bentley right now. You're not at the financial level that that you can. Now, sometimes they'll still buy it. And, you know, I hate to tell them I told you so, but so, it's gotten to the point where sometimes, you know, they almost lost everything because they couldn't afford to make all their payments. And I told them so. But, you know, and they all come back and say, yeah, you told me, I'm going to listen to everything you say now. But sometimes they got to get it out of their system. And I guess sometimes that comes with fame, right? The illusion of fame that they have to have these toys that they've got to show the world that they now are successful. But again, it goes back to their level of self-esteem and the coaching that you do.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always tell my clients to go back to their core values too. Like whenever they ask me, can I buy this? And I'm like, well, let's look at your core values and see how much of it really aligns with those core values, you know, and then you can, you have the tools to decide, you know, without just asking me, you know. So when do you think someone, you know, if they're in the entertainment industry, when do you think is an appropriate time for them to get a business manager?
So the thing is that I work with clients that are starting out, and we basically kind of pro bono the work. You know, we bill just the minimum. I believe that anybody who has already gone past where they've already got a contract with a record label, or they've signed with a decent agent at WME or CAA, they need somebody because they have to set up their proper structure, whether they're going to set their loan out corporation, or they're going to, you know, what their tax situation is going to look like. And so they might not encompass all of everything that we do, but they need to be guided by somebody who they're going to trust and grow into. The problem that I see is because they don't think they need somebody, they go hire the store, the local tax person, or they have their aunt doing their tax returns. They haven't set up the proper entity structure. And so they start off on the wrong foot. And so I always tell people, you know, I'm sure that a lot of business managers will work with you just because they want to help you and guide you and get you to where you do. Right now I'm working with 3 recording artists that are just starting out, but they've got some big things. And we did pro bono probably for 6 months. And we did it because we knew that they were going to grow, but we also said, you know what, we're better off making sure that they're doing the right thing. So when they get to the point where they really need us, we can jump in, but now we continue with a proper structure, because like anything else, right? You've heard this a billion times. If you start off with your foundation built on sand, eventually as you grow, that foundation is very weak and will topple over. And that's why I get a lot of iconic artists who've been around for 15, 20 years, some 30 years, believe it or not, and they've never had the proper structure. And if you follow their career path, they've gone bankrupt 2 or 3 times sometimes, and because they've never set the proper foundation. And so to me, it's important that they start right away. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you charge as soon as you get them ready, like these new artists, then do you start to charge a percentage?
Yeah. So again, in the United States, technically what happens, like if you're in the recording, you know, the agent will charge you like 15%. The attorney charges 5%. The business manager charges 5%. We tend to charge 5%, but we cap it. So we don't go crazy. So the thing is, it's got to be fair. We have a minimum flat fee, and some clients we have a flat fee for them as well. It just depends on the amount of time and complexity. There are some clients, for example, the way we normally have it is, it's a decent artist. We have a day-to-day client manager. The client manager has an assistant. That client manager has a managing director, and then they have me as a strategic person. And I'm always involved in reading everything that's going on, but I'm not doing the day-to-day stuff. So there's a team behind that person, and I've got to make payroll for these people. So it's based on how big is this person. I've got clients that started with me with one entity, and they've got, you know, their touring entity. They open up a restaurant. They have other businesses, and they continue to grow. So everybody's a little different. And I love for my clients to also be well diversified. You know, that they have a stock portfolio, that they have their own investments, that they're doing some private equity, and so they can continue to grow, because the entertainment industry is quite treacherous. There's a lot of twists and turns, and sometimes you're at the very top, and sometimes all of a sudden you're at the very bottom very quick, and then all of a sudden back at the very top, and so you don't know. So it's important for the client to also have not a plan B. It's just diversifying their assets, because at the beginning, they make most of their money from being them. There's no better investment than them. But it's just to have not a plan B, just diversification so they can build wealth and be financially independent at some point.
Great. One last thing. What is your sort of overall motto, philosophy for life, for business, for money?
I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. And that is, you are not going to take anything with you. You must keep things in perspective, that you are as bright as anyone that has ever been born. And no matter how difficult it gets, you will always have enough. God provides, right? And so to me, it's don't get caught up on things. Get caught up on, have perspective. And that's why I said, I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. I've been to a lot of funerals. I've seen some artists being buried with a bottle of whiskey that they've taken with them. I've seen, but that's pretty much it. I've never seen like they show where there's a car that's going with them or their house. You can't take anything with you, and it's just most important to be a real good person and just just do the right thing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this time, Luis.
You're welcome, Katie. Thank you.